Hello, hello, hello. What a great day we're having, and how wonderful to be here with all of you. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm completely wired and inspired, and I hope you're all feeling the same today. There's so much information, so much going on. I'm also a little bit scared. Woo! That was a tough morning in terms of the information we had to pick up on, and I had an up-close, experience with many of the panelists. Some good news, some bad news. We have a lot to cheer about. We have some caution that we have to put out there, and we will continue this. We're now going to be talking about friend or phone, okay? Not friend or foe, maybe friend or foe, and talking about relationships in the digital age. And I have two fabulous speakers here. This is Dona Bellow here, and Dona's an independent digital trust and safety advisor, and Dr. Anna Lomanowska, also joining us from Canada, the psychological researcher and consultant at the Digital Wellbeing Lab. Relationships, I mean, how are we making them, who are we making them with? Dona, let me talk to you a little bit. And when we look at technology at the moment, I think sometimes a lot of people look at it, like it's a utility. We get up in the morning, we've got the light, we got the heat, we got the air conditioning, we put the kettle on, we do whatever we're going to do, and we have a phone.
Yes. I think I wanted to pick up specifically on the part of the report that owned in on, people wanting to, preferring to keep their phone rather than having a friend, right? And I think that we need to think about what is behind that. And in a lot of cases, the way we think about our phone is a utility, right? We work through our phones, we make relationships with our phone, we date, we do all these things. And so I think having to even think about that choice is a bit unfair, because the benefits and how we think about what we get from a single relationship versus all the access that we get from our phone sometimes is not quite comparable. Yeah.
And again, building those relationships, they're so important. And we talk about maybe the importance of building relationships, and particularly when it comes to the theme of our whole conference, the well-being.
Yeah, so humans are a social species. We're not necessarily unique in being a social species, but we have a very rich social life, and we've evolved in communities, and it is the core of really what makes us humans and what makes us unique. Our ability to cooperate has built this amazing world that we live in, and hopefully we can cooperate to continue to build an amazing world together.
What I worry about sometimes is, the relationships that we're building online. And indeed, I'm sure many of you in this situation, I know so many people, particularly over the last couple of years during the pandemic, people got jobs, people began new careers, and they never physically, personally met their boss. I mean, people are beginning to do this, and they're very excited about it. And I was just mentioning that, and then Dona tells me the same thing. It's like she works for a whole load of people that she's never met. So, and it seems to be all right. You do the job, you get paid. So what's different about that relationship in terms of how do you do that and how do you build the strength there? And the trust, I suppose, as well.
Yeah, I think you have to be a lot more intentional about how you spend your time with people when you connect with them, right? And you have to go in with a clear intention of what you're expecting to get out of the interaction. The purpose for which you're engaging with people. And so sometimes it is to establish very deep connections. Sometimes it is to achieve a project together. And in my case, I work in a fully remote company, and that's how we operate. And we have norms built around that and around how we build trust and intimacy and relationship. And this is something that has to be very intentional and purposeful when we engage with people.
And again, within that engagement, particularly online, talk about, I suppose, how adaptable we are, because it is as real as reality is. It's, it's virtual reality for a lot of people is their only reality sometimes, and out of that can build, so much more.
Yeah, so this is just to build on the point. Humans are so unique because we are so adaptable, and we are so adaptable in our relationships, in our communication. I always like to bring up the idea of we've created emojis, memes, all kinds of cool, interesting ways to communicate, to connect, even when we are limited by the technology. So that always makes me really hopeful for how we can sort of traverse some of the boundaries and limitations that we may come across when we use technologies.
But I'm worried sometimes that, there's almost a new etiquette that's beginning to happen. Who makes phone calls these days? Anybody made a phone call to anybody today? A few people, just picked up the phone and said, hello, it's me. and didn't maybe call or text in advance to see if it was a good time. I'm finding a bit of a pushback sometimes, and I'll send a note to people, and they're going, oh, and literally, okay, it's not really a close friend, I guess, but saying, I can't fit you in until maybe the 3rd week in May for a phone call. A phone call. So this is, I think, a new etiquette that's building up, and also is creating a distance. Do you think?
Yeah, I guess I have a perspective of someone who's very much of an introvert. And in many ways, I feel like it's giving me a bit more control about how I want to engage and how I position my engagement and signal it to other people. And so being able to enter a space and let people know, okay, for relationships that are closer than me, maybe I'm going to be more open to texting, etc. For people who I want to dedicate less time to because we don't have just as close of a connection, I guess like I have built like different type of access and signals that I can give to people on how to build that etiquette for myself and for others and communicate that.
So, I mean, I guess I should just get the message. She doesn't really want to talk to me. Huh?
Yes.
So I'll maybe look to see if we can get a date. But talk to me about that etiquette too, because I do think there's a distance in one way, but yet the concept of the acceptance of texting. I mean, I always I do a lot of work with executives, and I'm like, the minute you put your mobile phone on your card, you've given everybody permission to just send you a note, morning, noon, or night. You may as well have put a big banner up. So in one way, you've opened yourself to everybody because you're there, and the first thing people are doing is, you know, as soon as you have a contact, they'll send you a little hello on WhatsApp. And at the other time, it's almost a barrier that says you can just text me, but you can't come too close.
Yeah, so I mean, these are some of the challenges that we're struggling with. How do we create these barriers and it constantly changes as technology changes. We've seen that during the pandemic as well. But also, it does give us a lot of opportunity, as Dona said, in choosing how we want to communicate and how the types of boundaries we want to set. So really, it's also just around practicing and educating people on how to set boundaries around technology, what is appropriate, whether that's within a work culture, whether that's within family expectations, how we connect with each other, when, what's appropriate. So these are all things we can communicate about and establish boundaries. But certainly, there's work to do.
I want to talk about communities and building communities, because suddenly, you know, what we know as our community, it's actually shifting. Now we can build our own communities. Companies are doing it, organizations are doing it. Some people ask me, don't I have a community? I'm working on it, I promise. But talk to me about how that is shifting, how good it is, perhaps, and what's the value of actually having a community? What would I do with my community?
I think that it's recognizing the fact that I think someone in an earlier panel mentioned that with the community, maybe some of the weird things about you, you realize that they're also out there in the world and there are people that you can connect with on that. And I think that especially during the pandemic, with people being so isolated and not realizing that, you know, what they're going through might be what other people are going through too. I think a lot of platforms have also picked up on that and realized that, okay, like how can we sort of like build on that feeling and allow people to find their people so that they have space to share, they have space to feel normal about how they feel, and find, you know, like, yeah, there are people that they didn't know existed even before.
And I guess, too, it's breaking down a lot of international barriers. And when you look at the concept of, I suppose, building communities, building tribes in many ways, and that's something very different and very new, because there was a time when, you know, I grew up in Ireland and we just sort of hung around with the local kids. We didn't do much. Now, those kids in Ireland, we look at what's happening in Ukraine at the moment. People can reach out to everybody in the world. If that was happening 20 years ago, you know, it might make a headline. And very, you know, having worked in television news, I remember a time when we would get the footage 2 days later because it had to be shipped on a plane and then eventually on a satellite, but it never came instant. So there's a lot happening around that concept of a community. Is it all good?
That's an interesting question. I think I kind of want to build a little bit more on the point of a community. So we expect to have these communities. We expect to be part of all these communities. We feel like this pressure to be part of everything. And I think we have to recognize we have some biological limitations in how we engage and how we meaningfully engage with other people, how we make meaningful connections and bond with people. There are some, I could really call it cognitive limitations to how we can cultivate certain relationships in certain communities. Just because you're part of some sort of group on a social network, does that make it a community? If you don't put any time into it, you're not really part of it. So really, it's about the people and the communities you're engaged with. It's important to sort of make a decision about who you want to engage with, for what purpose, and how does that serve you, and not try to be part of anything. I think that's the challenge here, right? Trying to juggle all of these different things that we feel that we should be a part of. It's the FOMO idea, right? And it's okay to normalize not being part of everything that I am, identifying with certain types of communities, for instance.
But how do people, and we look at, people looking at influencers and hailing the great work they're doing and the influence they're having, but how connected are they? Because just because you've got 1 million followers, I mean, can you keep up with half of them, quarter of them, 1/10 of them?
Yeah.
Where's the real relationship in that?
I think that, thinking about specifically creators and influencers, maybe the relationship is not so much about on the one-on-one basis between the influencer and the people that they're reaching out to. But I think we're looking at the opportunity for maybe people who are within the community that looks to this influencer, right, for them to connect. And because they're not the person on the stage, but they're part of the group of the people who have interest or have a shared interest in that person. And maybe that's where the community can come together.
Talk to me perhaps about, the challenges that are there. We don't have a whole lot of time, but, there's a lot of good in this, and I think we're hearing throughout the day, the value of social media, where we can actually all do good and get good from it. And again, I think there's a lot of that coming with caution, but a lot of it too, and we listen to so many people coming with choice. Mm-hmm. So how selective do we need to be, and how do we really have to look at those challenges that actually are there?
Yeah, I think this was brought up in the previous couple talks, this idea of what values are and identifying sort of what types of activities serve you for what your goals are at that particular time. These are choices so technology isn't really any different from other aspects of what you do in your life, selecting what you want to engage with and where you want to put your time and attention. Attention is a currency in our present world, right? So even engaging socially and paying attention to how we're engaging, that our time is worth a lot. And so this is making those choices. It's personal for everyone. It's going to be different for everybody, but certainly worth reflecting on.
Many people in the various panels too have talked about safety, security, education. I mean, what needs to be done in terms of making sure that we're in a safe space. And I love the fact you mentioned, I would never have known that you're an introvert. You radiate that joy, so it's maybe you have to rethink of your positioning there. But talk to me just a little bit about concerns on safety, security, and education.
Yeah, I think that when we're specifically talking about relationships and community, one thing that's important to consider is having psychological safety, right? That's something that needs to be there for people to meaningfully engage in relationships and also in community. And I think that psychological safety touches on all these points around how physically safe I feel, how emotionally safe I feel, how do I feel like my privacy is respected, can I trust the people I'm in the space with? And I think that those are things that productizing all those things into a platform is something that social media companies have a lot of challenges with, but also because that's something that is deeply personal and it looks different from everyone. And when you're a platform trying to operate at scale, bringing that into the fold is something very difficult. And so I think that there's an opportunity there to bringing more input from the people who are affected, right? And making sure that we keep people in the loop and we get their feedback through, we mentioned nudges, or we mentioned even in product surveys, or just get people to participate and give us what psychological safety means for them and how they want to see this manifest in the product. Yeah.
So in a way, I think, we can't really be passive players in this. This is very much about taking control. It's about us making choices, having discipline. Just a closing word from you, Anna, in terms of, what can, I suppose, everybody do to make sure that, again, that privacy is assured, that we know what we're doing. People are, kind of contributing to educating each other, probably. And that's probably one of the easiest things to do.
Yeah, I kind of want my closing word, I'd like to sort of focus on not necessarily privacy, it's not my expertise, but more on this idea of how relationships serve us. So I like to compare it to perhaps nourishing our bodies. So we nourish our bodies in different ways through diet, we choose what we eat. Relationships are similar in that sense, that it's important to cultivate relationships, to attend to how we engage with others, and to recognize that both online, offline relationships are important and part of what nourishes us and supports our well-being.
And I think, a closing word maybe from you, and that there's more positive than negative, do you think? I'm getting that feeling?
I do, yeah. I think there's a lot of opportunity. And I think that for everyone, when you pick up your phone and you get into an app, you should ask yourself, what am I going to use this for today? And how do I want to show up in this? And I think that's the piece of advice that until we have that prompt coming directly from the app, then I think that's something we can do for ourselves.
So be intentional, because I think it is, whether you're online, whether it's offline, I think, we crave those relationships, and we crave positive relationships, and, we want to make sure we do good and people around us do good. So ladies, thank you so much. Donna and Anna, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
A lot of information there in our quick little speed round. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand back to, Edie is in the house here, so I'm going to hand back to her. And have a lovely rest of evening. We're not quite finished.